You're listening to the Assembly Call IU podcast and postgame show, the place where Indiana fans across the globe hang out online after every IU basketball game. Join us for our live broadcasts on Thursday nights and immediately following every IU game at our website, assemblycall.com. That's assemblycall.com. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Jacksonville 94-64 at Simon Scott Assembly Hall in a game that completes the non-conference portion of Indiana's schedule, and in a game that featured a little bit of history, with Juwan Morgan notching the second triple-double in school history with a terrific performance that we will talk about as we go through this show. I am your host, Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms, and we will break down all of tonight's action for you on this edition of the Assembly Call postgame show. But first, we were saddened, as all of you were earlier this week, to learn about the passing of legendary IU beat writer Terry Hutchins. Ryan spoke some heartfelt words about his personal experience with Hutch on Thursday's edition of Assembly Call Radio. And we just want to say right off the top of the show tonight how much we appreciated Hutch's work covering IU basketball over the years, how much we learned from him, and how much he will be missed. To his wife, to his sons, to all those who were close to him, we want you to know that you are in our thoughts tonight and moving forward this holiday season, and we wish you peace during this difficult time. Over at Inside the Hall, Alex compiled a post full of personal anecdotes from past and present members of the IU beat who shared their memories of working with Hutch. Highly recommend that you read that. Well worth the read. And I felt that this line from Rick Bozich summed it up the best. He said, quote, "His passing leaves a hole in the IU journalism world, but he left us all with a smile and a blueprint for how to treat other people and do our work. We can all honor him best by remembering it," unquote. Rest in peace, Hutch. We dedicate this show to you. All righty, let's proceed now as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And look, obviously, in a game where a guy gets a triple-double, 7 minutes and 50 seconds to go, Juwan Morgan notches that triple-double. He only needed a bucket. He had already gotten the assist, already gotten the rebounds. He only needed 2 more points to get it. He got it off of a really nicely designed out-of-bounds play underneath the basket. But what I want to talk about, that obviously is the moment that really sticks out. But, I want to talk about the assist because I thought the story of tonight's game was Juwan's passing. And I thought an even more meaningful moment than that because, when Juwan gets a triple-double, the game is already decided. Indiana's up by 20-some points. But if you think back all the way to the first half, a little bit of a sluggish start for Indiana. And Jacksonville went on an 8-0 run at one point in the first half to take a 14-9 lead. And I think a lot of Indiana fans are kind of thinking, oh boy, here we go again. And what Indiana did at that point is they went to their bread and butter. And in this game, and as it's been all season, that bread and butter was playing through Juwan in the post. And he responded without scoring a point. He assisted on 2 of Indiana's next 3 baskets, one to a cutting Romeo Langford. Then on a subsequent possession, he found Al Durham on the opposite wing. Al put Indiana ahead 18-14, and the Hoosiers never really looked back. And that was the story of the first half. Juwan's passing. He had 5 assists. He had 4 great ones out of the post, and then he had that Magic Johnson-style one-handed bounce pass in transition that was awesome. And so, with Indiana, again, shorthanded, no Zach McRoberts, no Rob Finney tonight, they needed their most reliable player to be their rock early on, and Juwan was exactly that. He was really good from the get-go, played well the entire night, and so it was great to see that effort culminated with history, with getting that triple-double later in the game. So hats off to you, Juwan, for another terrific performance. All right, tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud and Home Field. At homefieldapparel.com, you will find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel anywhere. I've told you all about the Tri-Blend sweatshirt with the old IU Bison logo that I love. But they also have many other sweatshirts and T-shirts with old IU logos that you can't find anywhere else. So it's worth a look. And at HoosierProud.com, you can still find great State of Indiana-themed apparel while sending 10% of your purchase to causes around Indiana like the Julian Center for Empowering Survivors of Domestic Abuse. Both brands were started by an IU grad, and all Hoosier Proud and Home Field apparel is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. Find the perfect gift for the IU fan or Indiana resident in your life at Home Field Apparel and HoosierProud.com.
Can a brother get some coupons?
Yes. Don't forget to use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout for 15% off your order on either site. That's promo code ASSEMBLY at HoosierProud.com and HomeFieldApparel.com. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Tonight, that is Andy Bottoms. Andy, your bottoms line on this dominant Indiana victory.
I mean, certainly you have to start with Juwan, and that stretch you mentioned in the first half was one of a few that really stood out to me. Coming off of falling down 14-9, as you said, IU scored on 8 of the next 9 possessions and really took control of the game back over. And then at the end of the half, they scored on, I think, 6 of the last 7. And much to everyone's delight, came out in the second half, apparently ready to really kind of drop the hammer on Jacksonville. Scored on 6 of the first 7 possessions again there, and only gave up 1 point over Jacksonville's first 10. So for those long awaiting a positive start to a half and a quick start to a half, the second half was it. And I thought that really, put the game away. And it's one of the things in a game that you kind of knew was going to end up as a blowout, but one that you kind of look and how has this team improved? And I thought that was at least one way where they really jumped on them early and took away any chance of them really being in the game from that point forward. And then from that point, it was really just the triple double watch was pretty much the only drama left in the game. And pretty impressive it was kind of like needing a basket to make the triple double is kind of like a guy needing a single to hit for the cycle in baseball. It felt like it was like, how in the world does this not happen yet? It was surprising to me they didn't have 10 points, because really in the first half, every time they went to him, he just seemed like he could score whenever he wanted. So
he was 5 for 5. I saw a stat that he hasn't missed a 2-point field goal, I think, since the Louisville game, which is insane.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So it did kind of feel like, on the flip side, it was like, well, this is, if there's anything left that he needs to do, like, that's going to be the easiest one for him to get. And you kind of felt like he could score. So I think the timing worked out well. They could have that timeout, draw up a good inbounds play. I think Jess Settles talked about they'd worked a lot on baseline out of bounds situations. So maybe that was one they had worked on at the shoot around today, and were able to get him that and then get him out of the game and get him some rest.
Yeah, and I also thought it was impressive early on how he defended without fouling. I mean, he had all 3. I mean, for a while there, a very short while earlier in the game, it was kind of a quadruple double watch, because he had those 3 blocks early on. And, I thought for a little while after that early stretch, he kind of started hunting blocks a little bit, kind of coming over from the weak side, trying to block everything. But early on, we've seen him struggle in some of those situations, pick up some early fouls. He did a really nice job of defending the basket. Because I thought one of the struggles for Indiana early on was they really weren't defending the ball screen actions by Jacksonville very well. And that was, one of Archie's, points of emphasis coming in. And I thought that, the guards, Devonte Green, Al Durham, did a better job of that later in the game, but they were kind of struggling with that. Jacksonville was, getting the ball in around the rim, and Juwan did a nice job of cleaning that up without fouling. So just, a terrific night from him. And it's just another example. I mean, obviously he can score. We saw him put up 35 points against Butler, but he can impact the game in so many ways, because, the 3 blocks, the 2 steals, those won't be talked about a lot when you got 10 points, 10 boards, and 10 assists, and you get a triple-double. But he was Indiana's rock tonight, and it was great to see. And look, Jess Settles on the Big Ten Network broadcast, he was sounding the horn for Juwan as the one of the leaders for all conference. I saw earlier this week, did you see the USA Basketball Writers mid-season watch list for the Oscar Robertson Trophy? The Player of the Year trophy did not include Juwan Morgan. Not really a better response than the second triple-double in school history to that ridiculous snub.
Yeah, pretty amazing that was only the second one in school history, and that the first one came not with points, rebounds, and assists, but with points, rebounds, and block shots. So
Steve Downing, 1971.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely a historic night for him. Good way to kind of end the non-conference season, give these guys a break. And, like you said, a really solid all-around performance from him. Did a good job without fouling. And I think even the first foul that he got called for in the first half, I thought was debatable at best.
There were several debatable foul calls in this game, but that's neither here nor there.
You're a big guy that's standing with your arms straight up. That's going to be a foul, sir. You're going to have to go sit down.
So ridiculous. Still, even though, 30-point game, maybe not too much to take from this, but I still feel like there's a lot of storylines and interesting things to cover. One of them being Al Durham, who set a career high with 18 points. Really kind of got back to doing the things that Al does when he's playing well. He knocked down a few threes. Got some really nice catch and shoot opportunities. One was assisted by Devonte Green in the first half. Juwan had that other one that I mentioned, and we also saw him get back to his bread and butter of going to the basket some. And I really like seeing that in the first half. He had a nice drive and finish. He ended up, with those 18 points, he had 3 other 2-point field goals and was 3 of 4 from the free throw line. And then mixed in a few assists and a few rebounds too. On the negative side for Al, he had 3 of Indiana's 12 turnovers, and he continues to have this bad combination of seeing passes that aren't there and then really tentatively, awkwardly delivering them. And it's one of those things, like if you're going to kind of try and create an angle for a pass, you've really got to make that pass. And he'll kind of see something that's not there and try and float it over, and he just seems to be a little out of rhythm on some of the, when he's kind of creating for other people. But he did a nice job of being patient and creating for himself tonight offensively. And so I thought this was a nice bounce-back game for him. Jacksonville is not the type of team that presents the challenges that we've talked about that he faces sometimes with more athletic, more physical teams. But, with Indiana really needing to lean on him, especially with Rob Finney out of the game, it was nice to see him step up, score those points, and hopefully that's something that he can take forward from a confidence perspective with Big Ten play starting.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that 18 points can be quiet, I felt like he had a quiet 18. Like, I was surprised that that's what the final, box score really showed. Even though he did have 12 in the first half, even the first half, there were certainly moments where he played well. I thought, like you said, he had those couple turnovers, but he seemed to, bounce back pretty well and really, got going toward the end of the half. And it was a pretty good balance for him of taking open threes, but also attacking the basket. I think it was one of the better jobs he's done in games of really trying to balance where he was trying to score, how he was trying to score. Just in terms of, he made 3 of 5 from 3, but he also, made 3, he was 3 for 3 on 2-pointers, and then got to the line 4 times and knocked down 3 of those. So I thought, overall it was a good balanced performance from him. And, in the ongoing quest to figure out who the third scorer is going to be, I don't know that it's going to be him that emerges, but I think he showed that, in certain situations, he's going to be able to step up and make shots. If he can cut back on the turnovers, all that much better. But I thought he had a pretty good game, really start to finish, in both halves. And again, if Rob's going to be out for any period of time, there's really no choice but to rely on him, particularly if Zach continues to miss time with the back injury as well. So the guard and wing depth is getting lesser and lesser by the day, it feels like.
Yeah, and if you didn't watch the broadcast, and if you didn't see, Zach McRoberts did not dress, was not with the team. His back has apparently, kind of flared up on him again. Archie did say that Rob was feeling a little bit better, so, things sound like maybe they're a little bit encouraging there. But now, obviously, the team has a long layoff, a long break, so, we clearly won't get any updates on any of that stuff until until Archie Miller's media availability before the Illinois game. But yeah, I mean, Al Durham becomes just an essential piece. Both he and Devonte Green become essential pieces if you don't have Rob Finney, if you don't have Zach McRoberts. Let's talk real quick about Devonte, who I thought really came out and didn't play well early on. I thought he was forcing shots. I thought he just didn't quite seem kind of in rhythm. And, when you have a shooting night like he had the night before or the game before, I understand, you're feeling a little bit confident. But, this Indiana offense just really struggled when guys settled for long twos. And I thought Devonte was doing that early on. And he didn't shoot well for the whole game. He was 3 for 10. But I thought he really kind of improved inside of the game. He did finish with 5 assists. He had 4 rebounds, so another solid job. Rebounding from the guard positions, 2 turnovers in 35 minutes is not bad. And so I thought he really settled in and started figuring out what was working, which is playing through Juwan, and really attacking, getting into the paint and not forcing shots. So I was not that pleased with how he played at the beginning of the game, like nobody was, but I thought he really improved and played better as it went along. And so I saw, some negative commentary about him. I get, being frustrated early on, but I think Devonte has been a guy sometimes that if he's not clicking early, struggles to flip the switch back on. And I think one thing we're seeing from him now as a junior is he's getting a little bit better at doing that. And that's what impressed me the most tonight from him.
Yeah, I definitely thought he seemed to be hunting shots. And I think even in notes that I made, I think I just said, he's trying to do too much early and really forcing things. And I would agree with you. I mean, the second half, I think he only ended up with a couple shots from the floor versus, he took 8 in the first half, just 2 in the second half. And I thought he really, reined himself in and just focused more on getting other guys involved, made a couple nice shots, got to the free throw line more in the second half than the first. But I just thought early on, he really seemed to press to kind of, I don't know if it was to repeat the performance from Wednesday night, but I don't know, in this game, that's clearly not what they needed from him. And really just trying to get the ball to Juwan. I just thought he settled for some shots early that he could get really at any point. And one of the threes he hit in the first half was one of those, like, that's not a good shot, even though it went in. That was definitely a no, yes type of scenario. So it was just a difficult, start for him. But I agree with you. I thought defensively, I didn't think he was bad. Had a few steals and did some things there. Also just had to play a ton of minutes, played the entire first half and really even most of the second half with the game in doubt, just because there aren't a lot of other options right now in the backcourt. So that's, kind of good for his conditioning as a guy who was really trying to work his way back into things. So that's a positive as well. But yeah, I thought he struggled early, but I thought did enough late that, you could still find some positives in the performance. But, kind of his start was somewhat emblematic of the slow start that the team had. And as you talk about getting into a much more difficult part of the schedule, those are things that are going to come back to bite you more in those kinds of games.
Yep. All right, coming up, as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Jacksonville, I will point out tonight's meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from this game. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's 30-point victory over Jacksonville, a game that featured history with Juwan Morgan recording the second triple-double in Indiana history. That obviously a moment that everybody paid attention to. But Andy, let's point out a few moments that folks might have missed in all of the hubbub over Juwan Morgan's triple-double. And there's a great moment in the second half, I thought, Romeo Langford got a long three-pointer. He's, probably 3 or 4 steps behind the line and drained it. And, he's obviously a guy that has really, has been doing so many things well, but has been struggling with that three-point shot. And we saw one of the first Romeo smiles on the court. Like, there was a great picture of him after the Butler game celebrating, and you saw a smile, but you don't usually see him smile on the court. And you could just see how happy / relieved he was to see that three-pointer go down. Obviously, we hope that that's a harbinger of things to come. Ironically, what I really want to point out with Romeo here, though, in the second half, isn't necessarily him making a shot. Because while I thought that was big, what really stood out to me from him in the second half, again, in a game that was, fairly well decided after the first 3 or 4 minutes of the second half, because Indiana really came out and played well. When you're a guy like Romeo, who's expected to score and kind of wired to score, it would have been really easy for him, I think, in a game like that to really start looking for his and start taking it and start forcing some shots. And I was just so impressed that he didn't do that. He had that great little jump shot off of the action with Juwan Morgan at the left elbow that he made. And then he was really focused on looking for his teammates. Had a couple of assists, didn't force it, and I thought continued to play really hard defense. Again, in a game that's decided against Jacksonville. And so he's just a guy that I continue to be impressed, as impressed as you are with his physical abilities and his scoring abilities and all of those things. I continue to be impressed with his mentality and how he's bought into being a member of the team, and at pretty much all points, seeming like a guy who wants to make the best decision for the team. And a one-and-done guy with the kind of hype Romeo has had doesn't always get that. And I've seen some people questioning that, and I absolutely do not understand that because I just haven't gotten a whiff of that from him. And to me, that was I just saw that in a lot of his play in the second half, and it was impressive. I think you're muted, Andy.
I certainly was. He has these stretches each game. It feels like where he goes a couple possessions in a row will just go and score just to kind of remind you that he's still there and to go in and do it. I think there was one of those toward the end of the first half where a couple possessions in a row got I think a dunk on one and a lay-in on the other or something, where he kind of reminds you, like, I can do this really whenever I feel like it, but I'm going to get other guys, kind of like you said, get other guys involved. And I agree with you. I mean, he only took 2 shots from the floor in the second half and made both of them. And, again, I thought for him, ended up with 15, a somewhat quiet 15. Maybe I was just too busy paying attention whether Juwan was going to get triple-double and everybody's performance seemed quiet to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you notice any points tonight, Andy?
I didn't notice. I was watching everything. Yeah. Well, don't watch the ball. Watch everything else. No. I just thought, he had a couple really nice plays, but just was, solid in a game that, he probably could have scored a lot better if he wanted to. But I thought a lot of the guys did. I mean, you don't end up with, I think they ended up with 21 assists on 35 made baskets. I mean, you don't do that if guys are being too selfish. And I thought, even though he only ended up with 2 of those assists, I thought he was a good, the attention that he draws. And I think somebody mentioned that in one of the plays in the first half, he just kind of cut toward the rim. The help defender paid attention to him, and then Juwan ends up getting a layup because of it. I forget who tweeted that out. Maybe it was Zach Osterman, but you just see what a force he is, just the attention that he draws defensively. And, the scoring is obviously great, something he can do, but what he opens up for everybody else is something that, when he was going to come to IU, that's one of the things everybody said, just how much him being there would open up things for other guys. And I think that's definitely proven to be true. And he's certainly shown himself to be pretty unselfish.
All 5 stars tonight were in double figures. Has that happened this season in another game? I can't think of one.
I'm not even sure there's been another game when 5 guys were in double figures, period, let alone the starters. So, yeah, I would not imagine that that's true.
That's true. Well, and we've talked about all of them but one, and that was Justin Smith. And speaking of meaningful moments you might have missed, there was a 3-possession sequence in the second half that was just such a microcosm of Justin's offense this season. So on one possession, he gets a nice little spot-up shot on the baseline, set up by one of his teammates. He drains it. The possession after that, he gets the ball on the left wing, kind of in an ISO situation. He tries to drive into the lane, kind of stumbles a little bit, gets blocked, falls over, ball goes to the other end. And then on the next possession, it's transition. Juwan made a really great kick-ahead pass, and it was notable, just a little side comment, one of Archie's points of emphasis before the game with Fish was making that kick-ahead pass instead of doing so much dribbling in transition. And I thought we saw Indiana do more of that, and it's always nice to see the team really key in on the things the coach wants to see. But Juwan made this nice kick-ahead pass to Justin. He took it, did a nice little step through, and scored. And again, we've talked about this before. What is Justin doing well when he's playing well offensively? He's cutting to the basket, or he's making himself available for a pass from a teammate, which he did to get that spot-up jumper. He's getting out in transition, running the floor hard, giving his teammates a good angle to get him the pass. He did that with Juwan. What's he doing when he's struggling offensively? Trying to take guys off the dribble, which he did when he got blocked. And so, that 3-possession sequence, hopefully he is able to take that and internalize it, because if he can do more of the first play and the third play and start to minimize some of what we saw in the second play, he becomes a much more efficient offensive player. To his credit, 13 points, 6 of 7 shooting tonight. Those numbers look okay. I didn't think overall it was a great game for him because he didn't rebound. He was a little lackadaisical getting back in transition at times, had some fouls, so he only played 19 minutes, and part of that was getting other guys time. But I just thought that particular sequence offensively, it continues to show what he's succeeding with so far this year and what he continues to really struggle with.
Yeah, he was really involved a lot early in the second half. He took shots on 4 of the first 6 possessions, I think, what I got written down here was right, and the only shot he missed was the one that they got blocked, you said, and most of those were just, cutting off of other guys and Juwan being able to find him or other guys being able to get him the ball. He had the nice, pass from Devonte toward the end of the first half. And so, he got a lot of his, that's 8 of his points that he got within a pretty short time period there. I think the only, the big thing that I would point to is the 0 rebounds, because I don't think he had a lot of rebounds on Wednesday night. And it's kind of interesting when he wasn't playing as well. One of the things that we would always go back to is like, hey, he's been really good rebounding. He's playing solid defense and things like that. So I think his offense is starting to get going. Now we just need to, marry that up a little bit with the, some of the defense and rebounding components that he had early in the season when he was struggling to find shots. But I do think he's settling in a little bit more to where he can get the ball offensively and what kinds of things he needs to do on that end of the floor to get easy shots, because he's going to get easy shots for the most part if he wants him. Even the jumper he hit was, he was just kind of open because other guys were, getting the defensive attention, and it's a decent, 10-12 foot jump shot that he can make. And so I thought overall offensively he was solid. The rebounding is, I won't even go so far as to say that it was a concern. But I do think that's a couple games in a row that he hasn't grabbed as many. But otherwise, I think if nothing else, this stretch for him should be good for his confidence, which I think everybody was pretty concerned about at points, 3 weeks ago as to, kind of where his head was from a confidence perspective.
One other moment that really stood out to me was Demezy Anderson's hustle. There was one play, he was over on the right wing. It was in the first half, and he lost his dribble. He was just trying to do a little bit too much, drove through traffic. But I love seeing that after he lost it, his instinct was just to totally lay out and go after the ball. I mean, it was great hustle. It was Zach McRoberts level. I'm just going to totally give my body up to get this ball. That's nice to see from a young guy like that. Because in a moment like that, you're just playing off of instinct. And some guys' instinct is to reach for the ball. Other guys' instinct is to just dive, all out for it. And it was really nice to see that was what Demezy's instinct was. And we're going to talk about him a little bit more here moving forward because he was able to get out there for 15 minutes and I thought did some nice things. Before we get to stats, any other moments stand out to you that we haven't hit yet?
I just enjoyed seeing Jerron Davis out in front of the pack dunking the ball off after that.
That was awesome.
That one series. I just thought that was great. I don't think that's what anybody missed because everybody was like, wow, how is this happening? How is he in front of everybody? But that was cool. Plus the fact that he had gotten like poked in the eye or something in the first half and then he was able to come back in. It was like, good Lord, don't let anybody else get hurt. So
I thought he looked a little like more athletic tonight, like jumped a little better, ran a little better. Like he looked a little more spry tonight than we've seen in the last few games.
I just think I think with where he is from a rehabilitation standpoint, I think there are certain jumps that you might see from guys over the course of the season, but I think with him, it's going to be more exaggerated just in terms of how much more athletic he gets by getting into game shape because he didn't have the opportunity to do that as much during the off season. So yeah, I thought that was good to see him out there to be able to finish that play and do that. But other than that, no big moments stood out. I think the lob to Juwan for the to get the triple double was cool, but that is certainly not one that anybody missed.
Okay, let's talk numbers real quick. The most important number, of course, 10-10-10, Juwan Morgan stat line. You mentioned the assists. Another really nice job of Indiana moving the ball, 21 assists on 35 made baskets. That is a really nice rate. And from a three-point shooting percentage, Indiana 8 for 20, 40% again. So, here we are. I know that, Indiana doesn't have a lot of individual shooters that strike fear in you. And I think if you ask, general Indiana fan, is this a good shooting team? They'd probably say like, or they might even just say no. But here we are, after 13 games, all the non-conference schedule completed, Indiana is top 100 in the country in three-point shooting. And I just want to continue to point that out. And that is in part because I think what Indiana does well is they compensate for not having a lot of great individual shot makers and like prolific three-point shooters by being, for the most part, judicious with the threes that they shoot so that they have a higher percentage of making them. A lot of catch and shoot opportunities, a lot of open threes. They don't force a lot, and they do that and then are able to be efficient with it. It makes the three-pointer a useful weapon for them. Not the kind of weapon for a team that's going to take a ton of them, but useful in the way that they deploy it. And so I continue to be impressed and encouraged by that. And I think we've seen enough now. It feels like something that we'll be able to sustain and carry into Big Ten play. Maybe not at quite this rate, but still something that will be a positive for them. What other numbers for you, Andy, stood out?
50 points in the paint. That's been a big emphasis as well. I mean, you talked about the 3-point shooting. The flip side of that is, really, really trying to attack and get points in the paint. Some of those on, dribbling the ball inside, but others just created by opportunities. Guys like Juwan and making passes, guys cutting toward the basket. So 50 points in the paint is a big one. Just 12 turnovers, a couple offensive foul turnovers that was there in the second half, but just 5 in the first half when, things were really in doubt. So that's that's certainly a good number. Probably could have easily been single digits with if a couple plays went differently. That was there. We talked about the assist. For me, that was a big one. Free throw shooting was still not good. 16 of 26. I think maybe the first 4 trips to the line, they split. And then whoever took the last couple of the half, made both, might've been Al. So ended up, 16 of 26 on the day. Not a huge deal in a game like this. A really good free throw rate, 26 free throw attempts compared to 54 field goal attempts. But when you're only going to make, just a little bit over 60% of them, that is not great. Bench points had 25, which is Jacksonville, interestingly enough, brings their leading scorer off the bench. So IU still managed to outscore them in bench points, even though that guy, Note, had 15. As you said, 5 guys in double figures, 6 guys with at least 9 points was a big one. And then on the defensive end, just in terms of activity type stats, 7 blocks, 6 steals. Both of those are good numbers. They forced 13 turnovers, and they kind of did to Jacksonville at times like what IU had been prone to at other points. When the game really started to get away from Jacksonville early in the second half, they turned the ball over 4 times in a row. So one of those where things can kind of snowball, and I thought that their defense was pretty disruptive for the most part, and held Jacksonville to 3 of 13 from 3-point range, and they hit 2 in a row at one point in the first half as part of that run to build the lead. So they really, I think, only hit 1 over the last, I'll say 35, 33 to 35 minutes of the game.
One other number that's interesting is Indiana only had 3 offensive rebounds. And I've been asked a lot over the past few weeks about our lack of offensive rebounding this season. What I would say is, number one, we don't miss a whole lot of shots. So our volume of offensive rebounds isn't going to tend to be that high. But from a percentage standpoint, Indiana's offensive rebounding percentage coming into this game was 26.9%. That's 231st in the country. That's not real good. Last year, this was more of a strength for Indiana, 31.8%. And I think you kind of had to have that. That wasn't a great shooting team. You had a guy like Freddie McSwain, who you could really maximize his skills as an offensive rebounder. And so I think, when you see the 3 offensive rebounds, you can be concerned about it, but you add in the shooting, and then you add in that Archie Miller's biggest emphasis coming into this game, the first one he mentioned to Fish on the pregame show, was transition defense. Didn't like Indiana's transition defense against Central Arkansas. Archie is a guy who, you look back at his teams at Dayton, they never really had real high offensive rebounding rates, or they traditionally didn't. Maybe there was an outlier season here or there. Archie likes his guys to get back, get in position defensively, don't give up the easy bucket in transition, and one of the trade-offs there is offensive rebounds. So, I know that number can stick out like a sore thumb, especially when Jacksonville gets 11 offensive rebounds, and, I think Indiana's going to need to shore up its defensive rebounding a little bit, but that's kind of the explanation for why that is on the offensive end, Andy. Do you have any concerns about the offensive rebounding numbers at all, or is that just the trade-off Indiana's going to have to play this system and style that Archie Miller wants?
No, I think to me, when you go and you look at teams that really play the pack line, Virginia is kind of your textbook example, if you will. They really have been consistent if you look across their history in offensive rebounding percentage, and they've typically been outside the top 200. I think they're 140th this year. But they've typically not hammered the offensive glass. And Wisconsin is another fairly extreme example where they basically just don't go after offensive rebounds at all. So theirs, even this year, is particularly low. So I think you see that with a lot of pack line teams where you're really trying to prevent transition opportunities. And that's an area that really, I feel like since the beginning of the season, Archie has mentioned as a weakness, as a focus area in terms of really being able to, stop transition, not get guys out of rotation, being able to find shooters and things like that. And to the extent that IU shooting getting the ball inside a lot, hopefully you're not missing a lot of shots around the basket, which so far IU has not. And then otherwise you're really just trying to get back on defense. So I don't know that it's a huge concern. I agree with you. I think last year's team, it was kind of a, like, we need to do whatever the hell we can to try to find a way to score baskets. Yeah. And if that means I'm going to go hammer the offensive glass, and that's what I'm going to do. But I don't think that's as necessary for this year's team. Although, as Big Ten play heats up, maybe that changes a little bit, but I do think there's something to the fact that a lot of teams that play the pack line tend to rank lower in offensive rebound position or offensive rebound percentage.
Yep. Okay, coming up on the Assembly Call, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's victory over Jacksonville. We're going to have some time to talk about some of the guys at the back end of the rotation, Jake Forrester, Clifton Moore, Demezy Anderson. Talk about them, our observations, next on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 6,000 of your fellow IU fans are subscribed. It will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's victory over Jacksonville. Andy, we have a listener question that just came in.
So what do you take away from tonight?
So that Thank
I
you,
don't like
Ryan.
the sound of that guy's voice. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't like his tone. Not even a little
That's
bit.
because usually he's jumping in to interrupt something that you're saying.
Yeah, you should have played that while I was already talking, and then it really would have made it feel more lifelike.
So, Ryan, we've talked about some things that we've taken away from tonight. One of the things about a game like this, Andy, is, we have some time here to actually talk about guys like Demezy Anderson, Jake Forrester, and Clifton Moore, which we don't often do. And we should talk about Evan Fitzner as well, because he obviously got in there and got some minutes. But I want to spend a little bit of time on Demezy Anderson. Obviously pressed into additional duty with no Rob Finney, with no Zach McRoberts in the game. And, as it usually is when Demezy is out there right now, it was a mixed bag. We saw the shooting that we all know he possesses, 3 of 5 from downtown. He rebounded, but had a couple of turnovers, was out of position on defense. I mean, it was kind of what you would expect from Demezy, but I thought overall a solid performance from him. The thing that does impress me about him, like the impression that I get from Demezy is that his instinct every time he touches the ball is to shoot or drive, just like find some way to score. Like that just seems the way that he's wired. And I feel like kind of as the season has gone along and we've seen him get some more minutes in these games, he's kind of curtailed that. And I off the top of my head, of his 6 shots, I can't think of any of them that weren't good shots. They were pretty much all in the offense. He didn't really force the issue. He seems to be a guy that is, learning and improving. And he was actually the player guest on Don Fisher's pregame show. And he talked about how, it's been a hard transition because he's always been the best player on his team, always been a guy who's been expected to score, and he's had to find other ways to contribute and figure out another role. And I think his ability to do that, to me, was on display tonight. I thought these were some of his best minutes. And so, again, I don't think he's going to be a guy you're going to want to count on too much in Big Ten play, but it's at least nice to know that when he gets in there, it seems like he's going to try and not go outside of the offense. And when he does get shots, we obviously know that he can knock them down.
Yeah, I thought right after he came in the game, this was it reminds me a little bit of what you said about Justin Smith. In a very short stretch of time, like I think you kind of had the whole experience where he came in. I thought he had a really, was really intent defensively when he came in during the first possession that he was out there. Ends up getting the defensive rebound. I think makes a 3 on the other end of the floor, and then the next possession, bites hard on a shot fake, and the guy drives around him for a layup. And I was like, that seems about,
yeah,
it's just kind of where he is right now. But he had those couple threes right in a row from basically the same spot on the floor in the second half. And I agree with you for the most part. I think the 2-pointer that he missed was kind of a force, off the dribble. But generally speaking, you can tell.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was a long 2. Yeah. You're right.
You can tell that he's a guy who wants to shoot and is kind of wired to shoot and score. But I do think you've seen him, kind of rein it in. And I think in a game where the margin is what it was in this game, I think it's even harder for a guy like that to not just be like, you know what, I'm going to go. And that's what the 2-pointer felt like to me in that situation, was like, well, everything's going right, I'm going to take the shot. But I do think you've seen growth from him, and in a particular role, I think he's going to have some key minutes in Big Ten games. If people are really packing it in and trying to, take things away from Juwan, he's certainly shown he's a good enough passer to get the ball to him. And then it's just a matter of, can you get him up to an adequate level defensively where he's, not hurting you too much on that end of the floor. But, I think it's interesting, and I didn't hear the interview that you said, but one of the things that has struck me really since the beginning in any of the media availability and things like that he's been there, like, he seems to be pretty self-aware and pretty candid about what he does well and what he's struggling with and things like that. I think that's a good quality to have. There are certainly guys who you'd say the same things about, like always been the best player on the team, always been able to score whenever they wanted. There certainly are guys who would not be able to come out and say, hey, that's a struggle for me. But I think being aware of it is going to allow him to adjust and be successful over the course of his career. So I think that's a positive, and good minutes for him tonight. Again, you don't know how long Rob and Zach are going to be out, but at the very least, you're going to need to, have him spell guys for a few minutes here and there. And I think he's starting to show some confidence there. And I think it was one of those where it'd been a while since he scored. I think they said his first basket since sometime in November. If he's going to be forced into those kinds of minutes early in Big Ten play, that's intimidating enough, let alone when you haven't scored in a month. So, good to get him a little confidence and go back to that. And like I said, I think there's going to be games where he might knock down a couple big shots that we'll look back at after the game and really talk about being key plays.
Jake Forrester got 5 minutes, scored 7 points in those 5 minutes. Quick pop quiz that using context clues, I have a feeling you'll be able to answer. Who leads Indiana in percentage of possessions used on the season?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Jake Forrester.
Jake Forrester, who's using 33.9% of possessions when he's on the floor. I will say this about Jake Forrester. He does not get cheated when he is on the floor. He gets in there, and his teammates look for him, and he's looking to do stuff offensively. And, I saw this coming on Twitter when he's out there. It is easy to see, like, the highlight plays, to see him score and be active and get to the free throw line and do all of these things, get a block shot and think, okay, well, he needs to be on the floor. He needs to be playing more. But I will tell you right now, my prediction, if we were able to be in the film room, is that if we could see which moment would make Archie the most irate. There was a moment late while Jake was in there when I think he missed a shot, and he just turned and totally lollygagged it back down the court, and his man beat him in transition and scored a bucket. I have a feeling that's going to draw the ire of his coach. Those are the kinds of things that will keep him off the court, along with not getting a rebound during his time when he's in there, because Jake is a guy who's going to need to rebound. So, kind of like we talked about with Clifton in the Penn State game, some stuff to like, some stuff to build on, and that if he does get forced into action, he's going to be a guy who's active, can present a body down low that might be able to score and get you some buckets. But some of those breakdowns for a team that wants its identity to be rock-solid defense and in a defensive system that really relies on all guys being on the same page, in these minutes that Jake and Clifton and Demezi are getting, you're seeing the upside, you're seeing the highlights, but if you watch closely, you also see the reasons why they're not playing. And so, I think it's important to point those out just to make sure that everybody's expectations for playing time and, the decisions that the coaches are making, if anyone's questioning those, which let's remember, as Ryan likes to say, the coaches know these teams better than we do. If we ever forget that, we're fools. But I just thought we saw that mixed bag from Jake, as you would expect from these guys as freshmen that are still kind of feeling their way through their first minutes of action out there on the court.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the same that we talked about the other night, really active. And I think in the kinds of games that these last two have been where things are really, out of control, I think just being big and active on the offensive end is going to, you're going to walk your way into some baskets. And so I thought he was, exactly that. I think, now he made his first two free throws, which I think made everybody probably extra excited, and then, made one of his last threes. But I agree with you. It's because you also have to figure out, like, who are you playing him over at that point? And it's not just, hey, in these minutes he's doing that, I want him to get more minutes. Well, somebody else is not going to get those minutes, and you got to figure out who that's going to be and look at really the entire picture, as you said, where I think he could go in and do similar things to what Clifton Moore did at the Penn State game, kind of get some, clean up some things around the rim, get some baskets that way, and kind of really be active and flying around on the court. Flip side is you're going to probably give up some points on the other end of the floor. But it's another one of those where it gives you a glimpse of, hey, this guy in this system for multiple years with his just natural athletic ability and energy level can be a really, really valuable player for a long time. I just don't know that time is right now. But these types of experiences, getting these guys on the court for, those kinds of minutes are really invaluable to try to get that and get some things on film for them to learn from as well. So yeah, it's certainly a positive you take away from a game like this.
By the way, you mentioned earlier, I think it was Demezi getting pump faked and running by the guy. I will say, going back to our conversation about Devonte Green, one thing he did not do well tonight was approach shooters and be disciplined with shot fakes. I think there must have been 3 or 4 times that he just ran right by a guy. Obviously, it didn't hurt us in a game like this, but that's something he's going to need to clean up. Did you take anything from Evan Fitzner's minutes tonight? He had 3 points, did not make a couple of really good looks from 3-point range, had a few rebounds. Seemed like he had some opportunities down low that if he had caught the ball cleanly, probably could have converted into points a little bit easier. But, anything to take from Evan's minutes?
Not too much. I do think, you worry, and we've talked about this a little bit just from a confidence standpoint, where he's at. I think he draws a lot of confidence from really being able to step out and knock down threes. As you said, the couple he got in this game were clean looks that he missed. So was good to see him grab a few rebounds, because I know there's one thing we talked about. He seemed to be kind of struggling to grab the ball in traffic. So I thought he did a little bit better on that side of things. But I do think as you go through some of these other games and you see him, if he's not able to, really start making shots, it makes you a little bit concerned. Does he start to, lose confidence in that a little bit, which is really the the main thing he's being asked to do on this team to really space the floor.
All right, so we've gotten through a lot. The game ball segment tonight is going to be really short, I think.
Seems right.
Pretty obvious choice. Let's spend a few minutes here and just talk macro. The Ken Palm numbers just updated. Indiana's still sitting right there at 23rd, which is kind of where we've been. Obviously you win a game over the 292nd team in the country. Unless you beat them by 80 points, you're probably not going to move up very much. Indiana essentially just took care of business. And I think that was the nice thing about these last two games against Jacksonville and Arkansas. After what happened against UT Arlington and UC Davis, where you're shorthanded, those games are much closer than you want them to be. Indiana really did a nice job after that 4-game win streak and the elation of the Butler win, coming back down to earth and just getting down to business and getting done what they needed to get done against Central Arkansas and Jacksonville. And so now they head into Big Ten play. They got this nice break. I think they're going to be off until the 27th when they practice again. Sitting at 11-2. We'll be in the top 25 for the third straight week, in about as good of a position here heading into Big Ten play as I think before the season started that you could have predicted, and that's even with everybody healthy. Given the context of all the injuries, I think you got to be pretty ecstatic with where this team is after 13 games.
Yeah, I think if you had let people, if you'd said, hey, I'm going to give you 11-2 coming out of this stretch, I think everybody would have taken it and been pretty excited about it. Again, I think, the Duke loss felt like a given really from the get-go once you saw them play and how good they were. And then I think when you look at the other games on the schedule, I think you had to reasonably believe that they're going to drop one or two of those others. Now, if you ranked them in the order in which you might drop them, would the Arkansas game have floated to the top? Certainly not. And Arkansas hasn't played as well of late, which is not ideal, but Marquette, on the other hand, has started to play much better. So that win, looks better and better as you move forward. So,
but that defensive performance just looks incredible.
Yeah. Every time you see Marcus Howard like lighting everybody up for 45, they're like, man, IU really did a number on him. So, some of that, even in retrospect, looks even better than you thought it would. So I think to be 11-2, it's hard to be anything but excited about what this team can be. And it's at some point though, you're 13 games into a season where you've got 30, 31, I think, regular games on the schedule. At some point, the notion of like, I'm really excited to see this team, what this team can be when it's at full strength, maybe one that we just need to abandon at some point. I think Jerome Hunter, from that perspective, I think everybody's kind of moved on from that, but I think we keep talking about all these other things, and it's like, I'm not sure if it may just not be in the cards for this team to ever be at full strength. But that being
full
said,
strength is just having 8 guys who can play. That's full strength.
All right. Well, then we're barely clinging to that at this point, but that's good. But I think given all the injuries, I think the 11-2 looks that much more impressive, quite frankly. And so you can't help but feel good about that. And I think you've seen improvement in guys over the course of the season, and the Big Ten I think is going to be much more difficult than people may have thought early, and I think it makes it really important to get that Illinois game to move to 3-0 before things really get difficult and get interesting there. But like I said, I think if you had offered everybody up to be 11-2 at the end of the calendar year based on the schedule and what they had, I think you'd be hard pressed to find people that wouldn't take it. And I think in some ways being 11-2, given the injuries and given some of the other things, actually probably feels better than you even might think it would, as if 11-2 in and of itself wasn't good enough. So certainly things to worry about. You have to think maybe some of the, close game, winning every single one of those may, or I guess all but one, may catch up with you at some point. But I think the execution late in games has been good. I think that's been kind of a constant that makes you maybe calm some of those fears a little bit.
Yep. All right, coming up here in our final segment, we hand out our game ball, and I have some incredible numbers about Juwan Morgan that we'll talk about. We hit a few other storylines, and then in the last call, we will deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's victory over Jacksonville. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms, and we are wrapping up Indiana's victory over Jacksonville, which concluded the non-conference portion of the schedule. The Hoosiers 11-2 heading into Big Ten play, of course, with the 2 Big Ten wins already in their back pocket. Andy, this is the time in the show when we hand out our game ball. Coming into tonight, Juwan and Romeo each had 4 game balls. Deron Davis had earned 2 of them. Rob Finnessy and Devonte Green each with 1. I have a feeling the tie at the top is going to be broken.
Well, I think we should really spend a lot of time hashing this one out to really come to a consensus on who the player of the game really was tonight. And I mean, I think this one is as easy as there has been over the course of the season. Juwan, certainly the triple double. I mean, those, some of that is just, numbers, and that sounds exciting. But I mean, to really look and see what he did and how he impacted the game offensively with his passing, I'm not sure that the 10 assists really do it justice. Even in that case, it was just, he was such a focal point, proved early in the game if they were going to give him the ball and not double team him, he could score whenever he wanted. Then they started to make things a little bit more difficult there, and he was a guy who consistently found other guys. Jacksonville played zone for a little bit. They stick Juwan in the middle. He's just slinging the ball around to whoever is open, and credit to the guys on the other end of those passes for making shots. But I just thought he was fantastic, and just really helped erase any doubt in the game pretty early on. And really, like I said, at a certain point, the only drama was whether or not he'd get the triple double. So I think well deserving of the game ball and breaking the tie.
Or, if Ryan's prophecy, or maybe not prophecy, but what he talked about after the Central Arkansas game, where, after a game like Butler, they should have just given Juwan a hot tub and a cigar to just sit over there on the sidelines and watch the game. I was kind of hoping they would do that after he went out with 6 minutes left, because he certainly earned it after that performance and what he's done for this team this year. Numbers wise, look, the numbers for Juwan right now are getting insane. He is on 2-point field goals. He's 75.8%, which is 7th in the country. I have a feeling that the people who are above him have not taken almost 100 2-point field goals this season. He's still in the top 100 in the country with his 3-point shooting, 46.4%, but he's not forcing them. That's the thing about his 3-point shooting is he's taken a lot more threes against Indiana's better competition, but he doesn't just get comfortable in these games where he could, just kind of stand outside and shoot threes. I mean, he got the ball down low and didn't force shots down there either. Took 5 shots, made 5 shots. His effective field goal percentage, 74.4%. That is 6th in the country. And he's also, his rebounding rates are really good. His block percentage of 5.5 is outstanding. And his offensive efficiency, 128, is in the top 100 in the country. So, I mean, he is doing absolutely everything that he could do for this team. I wholeheartedly agree, again, as I mentioned earlier, with Jess Settles, that he's among the top contenders for Big Ten Player of the Year right now. It's still very early, and that it was an absolute ridiculous snub that he didn't make that midseason watch list. But look, midseason watch lists don't mean anything. So hopefully he saw that, got mad, uses it as motivation, and all that matters is that he's there by the end of the season. And if he keeps this up, he will be. The other thing I think about this team that we are seeing as they kind of grow together, Andy, is this is a really unselfish team. We're seeing the assist rate numbers be better. And I just feel, and part of this is, there were new parts and pieces. There's been injuries, so it's been hard for the chemistry to develop. But I think as we're seeing it develop, outside of some times when I think guys, maybe take a 3-pointer early in the shot clock or take a long 2, I feel like there's a real unselfish vibe on this team, and I think it stems from the fact that the team's 2 stars, Juwan Morgan and Romeo Langford, are clearly committed to unselfish play, and that makes them fun to watch. I even feel like some of the bad shots they take are more just kind of bad shot selection, not necessarily selfish, but just thinking a shot is a good one when it's not. And I really appreciate watching a team that seems unselfish and seems to really want the next guy to succeed. And I get that feeling, and I attribute a lot of that to the example that Juwan and Romeo set.
Yeah, just one thing. So I did look up the 2-point percentage, the guys who are in front of him. So only 2 of the other guys of the 6 in front of him have taken more than 56 shots from the floor. So Taco Fall, the guy who's 7'6" on Central Florida, is 56 of 70. Look, if you're 7'6",
the guy who's 7'6",
you better be 80% from 2-point range. And then the other one is Tristan Clark of Baylor. He's 6'9". He's 62 of 79. So but otherwise it's guys in the 50s or 42. Yeah, you're 7'6". Yeah, good for you. Yeah, Juwan's almost the inverse. He's like really 6'7" as opposed to 7'6". So anyway, but no, I agree with you on the assist. I think Juwan playing the way he does. We mentioned this with Romeo about how it would have been an easy game to go and get his and really focus on playing that way. And he didn't do it. And I think we've seen that. I think that's been one of the criticisms of him. Maybe he's not selfish enough. But I think Juwan, just the passing numbers, they showed it during the broadcast where they, kind of showed his assist rate over the course of his career, and it's really skyrocketed. I'm sure it's even higher than, I think it was like 17% when they showed it on there. It's certainly much higher now. I just
20.6 now.
That's not bad. That's what a 10 assist game will do for you.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's important because on a team with two really defined stars, that's important. But I think knowing as their teammates that they trust other guys to be able to make shots, and they're not going to force shots in double coverage situations, and they're going to kick out to the open guys. If the open guys can continue to make shots at the rate that they have, as you said, a lot of the 3-pointers are catch and shoot off of scenarios like that. I think that really bodes well for IU. But I think that level of unselfishness makes it easy for there not to kind of become any kind of division between, hey, here's the stars of the team and everybody else. And that was really one of the things that everybody said about Romeo from the get-go, that he wasn't the typical 5-star guy who wanted to go get his, that he wanted to be part of the team and do that. And so I think, the assist numbers have been really good in these last couple games. And I think that's a reflection of the unselfishness they've shown.
So, quick programming note, we will not have Banner Monday this Monday. It is Christmas Eve, so we'll be taking that one off. We haven't decided yet if we're going to do it on New Year's Eve, but we're definitely not going to be doing it on Christmas Eve. So our next broadcast will be Thursday, Assembly Call Radio, December 27th. That's the first time that we'll be back. So no Banner mornings during that time either. We're going to take a few days off, just like the team, kind of get away from it. But then, we'll be back with our normal schedule.
Much like the team, the NCAA has mandated that we take this time off. So we,
yeah.
who are we to stand up to such an upstanding organization as the NCAA?
Absolutely. I respect whatever rulings the NCAA hands down, and we will follow them accordingly. So that's what we're doing schedule wise. Anything else from this game, Andy, that we haven't hit? I feel like we've covered most of the major.
I think we've done our part to cover.
Can we squeeze anything else out of this
30-point blowout? Yeah, I think we're good.
I think we're good. I do think we're good. All right. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off your entire order at HoosierProud.com and at HomefieldApparel.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, go to HomefieldApparel.com. And if you want one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com. And on both sites, use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout, and you will get 15% off your entire order. All right, well, we can get out of here a little bit early tonight, Andy. Let's head to last call and be on our way to celebrate the Christmas holiday.
Absolutely. Well, I think, again, probably the best way to circle back is to the fact that I use 11-2, and it's, they have very few of them have been easy and have felt great. But if you look back through 13 games a season ago, it was 7-6. So I think a 4-game improvement on that is well earned by this team, and I'm really excited to see what they can be down the stretch, because I think there's a lot of things to like about them. They've continued to play well defensively. The growth that was seen defensively a year ago has really kept up that momentum over the course of the first part of this year. And I think if that can continue in the Big Ten, you're going to find yourself in a lot of games, and I'll take my chances with guys like Juwan Morgan and Romeo Langford leading the way offensively in close games. In addition to how well Archie has fared in those over the course of his career, that's been brought up this month with so many close games, and just how this team has played in those games before. So I think a really positive non-conference season, plus those couple Big Ten games over the course of it. I don't think, you never know before you've seen a team play how things are going to play out. We may have predicted 11-2 records, but as I said, I don't think they got there in any way, shape, or form in the way that we thought that they would, just in terms of who's playing what roles, the injuries, and all those kinds of things. But certainly a positive for IU, and something that fans should be excited about as we head into a little bit of a break and get ready for the part that's going to be, as for as many things that seemed hard, it's kind of like, all right, well, now take a breath, exhale, and then the hard part really gets started in early January when Big Ten play starts. But certainly exciting for them, and and from my perspective, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody with the show. Enjoy some time off with your family, and I thought what Jerod said about Terry Hutchins was really well said. At the beginning, that post that Alex has, it is not hard on Inside the Hall. It is not hard to see the common threads of what he's done and what he's meant to a lot of people and in the industry and students and things like that. And I think any of us would be lucky to have people say things like are being said about Terry Hutchins after we are gone. So certainly lost him too soon, but rest in peace to him and his family during what's sure to be a difficult holiday time for them.
Absolutely. Look, I think we'd all love to have a few more blowout victories. We'd certainly love to have more guys healthy. But I think when you look at how the first 13 games of this season went, we've got a team that has dealt with adversity, that is for sure, and has been put in different situations. And they've come out in most of those situations, and they've been successful. And so I think you have to be happy with where this team is at right now, given kind of the context of how everything has gone this season. I know that I am, and I'm excited for this little break, but I'm really excited to get back and see this team play. Andy, when we kind of do what we do, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, there have certainly been some seasons where you're looking forward to the next game and the next post-game show and the next opportunity to talk about them and break them down and learn something new about the team. And then there are other seasons where you're just kind of dreading it. It's like, all right, well, we got to, we're going to watch the game because you root for the team, but your hopes for seeing something new or for really seeing growth aren't really there. And I think with this team, I'm really excited to get back and watch them play against Illinois. It's fun having two players like Juwan and Romeo that are so good, that are so talented, that do so many things well, and that really seem to be team-first guys, and then to see everybody kind of falling in line around them, and to see kind of with each game and each week, even though every now and then there's a step back, you get a couple steps forward in this new system and identity that Archie Miller is building. And no coach is going to be able to, have that fully installed in less than 2 years, and certainly Archie doesn't either. But you really see it, and I like the identity that this program is taking. I like the kind of basketball that they're playing. I like the things that they stand for, the things that they're about, and that makes it fun to show up every game to watch them, and to show up every show to talk about them for you guys. So really excited to take a break, but just as excited to get back and see what this team has in store for us against Illinois, and then for that really tough stretch in January. But I feel good. Most nights we're going to have the two best players on the floor, and that gives you a chance to win every night out. And when you play defense like Indiana can, and for the most part does, that's going to keep you in games. And I think those two things combined are going to make this a really fun, entertaining, interesting, and hopefully successful Big Ten season for the Hoosiers. All righty, well, that will do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat and join the chat mob, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening to the show. We'll be back for Assembly Call Radio on Thursday. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
Rest in peace, Hutch.
Thank you for being here and for listening to this episode of the Assembly Call. We appreciate it. And we really do rely on the support of audience members like you to keep our show going and to keep growing. And so we have set up a page on our website at assemblycall.com/support that lists 5 ways that you can support the Assembly Call. And we encourage you to choose whichever method is the easiest and most convenient for you. One of the methods is donating, and so many of you have donated, and we appreciate it so much. On that page, you can choose a monthly recurring donation or an annual recurring donation or just a one-time donation, whatever works for you. And if you don't want to donate, another way to support the show is you can use our affiliate URLs, iutickets.shop or iustore.shop when you're going to shop for tickets or gear, and we will get paid a small commission when you use those links. But however you support the show, we appreciate it. Thank you.